I'm Orestria, a goth girl in Japan, and welcome to Anime Indecision. Unsure what to watch in the spring 2024 anime season? Well, I watch too much anime, so I'm here to share my thoughts with you. From a bisexual, asexual, feminist, leftist point of view, with an internet-friendly tier list. Ikimashou! I'm just gonna explain the tiers as we go. Tsukimichi Moonlight Fantasy, I have not watched season 1, so it goes into didn't watch. Most of didn't watch is going to be things that I haven't seen the first season of. Some of them are going to be anime that I've already dropped in preview. The other exception is that I usually don't watch a lot of music or idol anime, unless there's a specific reason I think I might like it. Grim Variations. This is going to go in good for thee, not for me. This category basically means that I recognize there's a lot of quality here, but either it's just not a topic I'm interested in, or I chose a different anime over it because I can only watch around 14. For Grim Variations, each episode of this anime is a twisted version of a Grimm's fairy tale. I only watched the first episode, which was Cinderella. For me, the quality was good, but I kind of knew exactly what the twist was going to be the whole time. When it's a double-length episode and you're just waiting the whole time to find out something you already know, it ends up dragging a bit. Mysterious Disappearances. I'm going to put this in mediocre. We have a pair of bookstore clerks. One is a remarkably busty woman, and the other is a young man who, almost seems too young to be working. And then there's a book that's been reverse shoplifted. So a book that doesn't belong to the store has ended up on the shelves. And for some reason, the lady takes it home and reads it out loud, and it curses her, putting her into a child's version of her own body, which would kind of be cool, except for the part where it's literally killing her. Luckily, the young guy from work is some kind of supernatural dude, and he's able to help her out. What I didn't like about the anime was that he kept hitting on her, and it just had this really uncomfortable vibe because of that. Then I researched it after I'd watched the episode, and I found fans of the original manga complaining about how much of the ecchi they'd removed. So I think the weird vibes I was getting was the kind of leftover ecchi energy. I'm not inherently against ecchi. My problem with ecchi is usually that it's non-diegetic and non-consensual. And so that's the kind of vibe that I dislike. And so I'm putting it in mediocre because if it was just that it's ecchi and I don't like ecchi, I could maybe say good for thee, not for me, especially with the level of qualities and the fact that it has an actual plot. But it sounds like even if you would actually like it, you're better off reading the manga because they remove the ecchi. Misfit of Demon King Academy. I loved the first season of this anime. It was primed so bad it's good territory, but the subsequent seasons, they lost the balance that made it really fun. BK Euphonium, I know, haven't watched it yet, I know, it's on the list. Regular at Magic High School, I think I watched half of one episode of the first season of this and I dropped it. God's Game We Play. This is going to be the first one that just goes in the bad category. I think there's redeeming qualities to Mysterious Disappearance. I could see someone watching it and having a good time. There was some interesting stuff happening if you can ignore the weird vibes and aren't missing the ecchi. I do not know who is enjoying this. Even if you like the idea of what it's trying to do, there are anime that do it much more successfully. Humans have access to the gods' world, and the gods create games for the humans to play, and it gives the humans superpowers, and if they win enough of the games, they'll get some kind of super prize that no one's won yet. Whatever. Weirdly, in the human world, they actually find a goddess. They dig her out of ice. They bring our main character to her because he's one of the up-and-coming players of these games, and she wants some entertainment. We've got the two main characters, and it's a show about playing games, and they're about to play a game. So this game is setting up what we can expect from games in this anime, and the dynamic between the main characters. So what game are we gonna play? Memory. The goddess shows him the cards, and they all have getting to know you questions written on them. So the idea is you pair up the two cards with the same question, and then you have the right to ask that question to the other person. Okay, that's a nerdy way to get to know each other, but whatever. But oh, because they've seen the cards, they both have it memorized. So to prevent them card sharking, she uses her goddess powers to make the cards fly all around them. This doesn't seem to actually affect their ability to match the cards. It just makes it even more impossible for the audience to play along. It gets worse. They don't tell us the win condition until someone has already won. The win condition was not to make the most matches. The win condition was to match the 2 blank cards and thus be able to ask any question you want. They never showed us the 2 blank cards. There was no way to play along. There was no way to engage with the strategy. There was no way to understand the stakes. I had to be told who won because I didn't even know what it meant to win. Okay, Spice and Wolf. This is a good opportunity to talk about the difference between recommend and Orestria likey. For me, recommend does not necessarily just mean my favorite things. My favorite anime might be some kind of niche genre thing that I think is not generally recommendable. I like the anime Symphogear, but Symphogear is a lot. It's not something I would just generally recommend to someone without really having a good knowledge of their taste. Recommended tier is like someone you don't know well messages you on Twitter and says like, what was the best anime of last season? And you're trying to get like the most generalizably good anime. You don't know what this person is into. Thing about Spice and Wolf. Spice and Wolf is amazing. Spice and Wolf might be anime of the season. Spice and Wolf is a little bit like The West Wing. Spice and Wolf is a lot of watching people talk about economics and the ebb and flow of the market and town gossip and town folklore and all these small little things. The most surprising tidbit of information can be the last puzzle piece that makes everything come together. If that sounds even mildly interesting to you, consider this a highly recommended show. But if I'm just talking to some rando on Twitter, I don't know if that's what I'm recommending to them. Tonari no Yoko-san, that I'm going to recommend. We're in a modern AU reality where folklore is real. And not just real, but like everyday, normal. Every person experiences folkloric creatures every day. Go to school and one of your classmates is a kappa. The household cat that's really elderly but really loved, think they're going to pass away soon, and they turn into Nekomata. It's a bit of an ensemble cast, which I think was really good in one sense because we got to see a lot of different sides of this fictional world, but I also think it was a little bit of a weakness because some of the story arcs didn't quite get through. I mean, maybe that's because in subsequent seasons they get resolved, but some things just didn't quite gel. This is a fantasy world that I feel like I would like to live in. Maybe not, because things are not really idyllic. There are signs that something is breaking at the edges of the world. Like something you think you see out of the corner of your eye, but you're not quite sure. I'm going to recommend this, though, because if you're looking for something different in your anime, you don't just want a bunch of high school kids, you don't just want a shonen tournament, and you want something absolutely drenched in Japanese culture, it doesn't get much better than that. Konosuba, I haven't watched yet. Tonken Rambu Kai. Right, this is a bit of an unusual one. This doesn't fall into any of the usual categories for my didn't watch. There's a subsection of Japanese culture, Japanese manga, anime, games, etc. that's really based on Japanese historical figures and Japanese literary figures. I find some of these properties very inaccessible because I don't have the kind of knowledge. Date A Live! I haven't watched the first one. High Speed Etoile is going straight into the bad category. Whew. So this anime is about car racing. Not just normal car racing, but like this fancy high-speed car racing where they can go really fast because there's AI built into the cars to prevent bad accidents. And actually, they breathlessly tell us that a lot of the cars don't even have drivers, they just have AI. I am not someone who engages with sport a lot. I definitely don't watch car racing. But my understanding is that people are less excited by like the literal cars, but by the stories and drama of the people driving them. You root for the driver, not for the literal car. That feels like a step in the wrong direction to me. Another step in the wrong direction is that we spend a large chunk of this anime episode watching these like AI projection idol girls They have time to sing a whole song and show us every inch of the racetrack and talk about all the features of the racetrack, like how it's got a heating system. And then we get told about, like, the king of the sport, currently indisputed as the best, and then the queen, who has, like, beat him once or twice, so she's, like, the second best. And then we start the race, and you would think it's an anime. So we can cut the camera and actually go inside the car to see the racers' faces, to see their expressions or their reactions to things. And this does not do it. So we are just watching CG cars go around a track with commenters talking over top of it. I can't really imagine that being entertaining, even if you like car races. And as someone who does not like car races, I was so bored. Just like the anime, I have saved the best part for last. Because 20 minutes into the episode, they introduced the main character. The main character is basically started not appearing in this episode. The entire episode was filler. The first episode was filler. Dungeon Meshi! The premier dungeon ecology / comedy cooking anime. I still think that I don't get this anime in the visceral way that a lot of people seem to. A lot of people love this instantly, and it took me several episodes to get into it. A lot of people absolutely love the characters. They identify with the characters. I don't have any problem with the characters, but I'm not in love with any of them. Even as someone who is somehow slightly disconnected, I still have to say the details are excellent. The world building is excellent. The trigger animation. Do I need to say more? And there's just a sense of joy. It genuinely feels like everyone making this had a blast, and it transcends the screen. Yatsura! I dropped that last season. I also didn't like Inuyasha, so it might just be that I don't really like this author's work. I mean, I remember liking Ranma, but the last time I watched it was like 20 years ago, and I was homesick with the flu. There's a remake of that coming out, so I guess we'll find out soon if I actually like it or not. It's high quality. It depends on the gags and the people. I mean, I guess I could just put it in good for thee, not for me, but I didn't watch it this season. Train to the End of the World. Yeah, I'm gonna put it in Orestria likey. This is a unique post-apocalypse that's beautiful and bizarre. Every different region you go to somehow is following a different set of rules than everywhere else. And it's all because of 7G. That's not a joke. Well, okay, that's not my joke. That's the anime's joke. The girl who pressed the button is missing from her hometown, where all the adults have been turned into animals. And her friends decide that they are going to go to Ikebukuro to rescue her. They get a train, they learn how to drive the train. But even though in normal life, the trip from Agano to Ikebukuro is not long, in this new warped world, it takes days, and they have to go through all these different warped regions, experiencing the people there, the rules there, what's changed there. For me, what's holding it back? This is a little hard to explain without spoilers. It's a little bit predictable. Not the places you go and the things they experience. Those are really creative and fun. That's the best part of it. But there's a central core character part of the plot that is predictable. And even that alone wouldn't be a problem, but I feel like they were not very successful with how they concluded that. And since that was like the heart of the anime, it really brought it down for me. And I mean brought it down from recommended to Orestria likey. It's still quite good. Although, I saw people saying this was one of the sapphic shows of the season. And I don't see it. Friends be friendsing. Bartender! This is a remake of a bartender anime, and I am gonna put it in good for thee, not for me. There are a couple of women that work at a hotel, and the hotel's been open for a while, but they don't have a bartender yet, because their boss has unrealistic demands for the bartender. He wants someone who can pour God's glass. And the first episode is like, the women keep running into this absent-minded guy while trying to find this great bartender that they've heard of. And of course he is the great bartender, which is obvious if you've ever watched any media whatsoever. And also because he's literally the guy on the poster. And apparently God's glass is like deductive reasoning. Is like deductive reasoning, but as a bartender. I mean, this is really cool. It's chill, it's character driven, about adults, but I don't even drink. So I'm personally not very interested in the subject matter. You do, Camp. I have not watched it yet. An Archdemon's Dilemma, How to Love Your Elf Bride. That's funny. The English name dropped the word slave from the title. I wonder why. Okay, if I'm calling God's Game bad, then I'm calling this bad too. So our main character is a sorcerer, and he goes to the estate sale of a great sorcerer. And this was the first, that's happening, because we have one scene where his friend is like, hey, did you hear that this guy died? They're gonna have an estate sale. And they're like, let's go. And then the next scene is them arriving so late that they're only there for the last item at the sale. That's a little weird, writing-wise. The last item at the sale at the estate sale is an elf slave, and our main guy falls in love at first sight with her and bids, his entire life savings. This first episode had, two main jokes. The first was that the main guy is so awkward that everything he says either makes him sound like a pervert or makes him sound really imperious when he doesn't mean to. And the other joke is that the elf girl misunderstands everything he says to think it's him suggesting how he's going to kill her, even though he's repeatedly told her he's not going to kill her. For me, his jokes didn't work, and hers did. The whole thing is, really mediocre in terms of animation. I had the speed increased the entire time, and it was indetectable. You couldn't tell from the music or their speech that it was sped up. It's a romance between a man and a woman he bought as a slave. That's just always going to be uncomfortable. Oh, speaking of uncomfortable, Jesus Christ. I was reincarnated as the 7th prince, so I can take my time perfecting my magical ability. Bad. Go away. Our main character was someone without a lot of magic who idealized magic, and he gets reborn as the 7th prince, which means he has a lot of free time because he's not like the 1st prince, so he's not important. He just spends all his time studying magic, and fuck this anime. I was dreading the anime just from the poster. The camera pans up this child's legs. Honestly, the first episode was mostly pleasant. There was good animation, good idea, good storytelling. The comedy chops were there. But if anything, that just makes me more angry. Because that quality could have gone to a show that needed that extra push to get popular. Or they could have just scrapped the pedophilia from this, and it would have been good. That time I got reincarnated as a slime, I have not watched it yet. Go Loser Ranger. Ooh. Is it too niche? I don't think so. Yeah. Alright, I'm putting this in the recommended tier. So there's a Sentai group, like Power Rangers, and a group of monsters that are bent on world domination. But right away you can feel that something's wrong, because the Rangers fight the monsters at a scheduled time at a stadium with a paying audience. We find out that, the boss monsters have already been defeated, and it's just the generic fighters who are left. They can shapeshift and are basically immortal unless they're killed with, special artifacts that the Rangers have. And our main character is one of these fighters, and he's decided he's not willing to play along anymore. He uses his shapeshifting powers to infiltrate the Rangers and try to destroy them from within. This anime story is constantly in flux. There's never a status quo. I did stop watching weekly because there's a lot of cliffhangers, so I saved it up for a binge. But if you're watching this video, that's already not a concern for you, so you don't have to worry about it. It's got a bit of a dark comedy tone. It's got a little bit of everybody sucks here. Unnamed Memory. Oh, that hurts. Oh, it had such potential. I'm going to put it in mediocre. There's a prince who has been cursed to be unable to produce an heir. And he passes this witch's tests and wants her to lift the curse. She says that she can't lift the curse, but she'll help him find a woman who could bear him a child despite the curse. And he's like, would you do? Well, yeah, but I'm not going to marry you. So they have an uneasy contract where she's agreed to join him at his castle and protect him for a year, and he's going to spend that time trying to woo her. And at first I really thought this would be my thing. A romance between a prince and a witch, a romantic fantasy. I love this kind of stuff. Most of the plot doesn't revolve around the relationship or the characters getting to know each other. It's just a series of stuff happening. Nothing leads to anything. There's no logic to the plot flow. Like, look at this cool thing the witch does. Look at this other cool thing that happens. Kaiju number 8. That one's definitely going in recommended. Good old shonen fun! We're in a modern Japan that has kaiju attacks so frequently that there are, like, shelters, alerts, organized evacuations, a special defense force just for the kaiju. Our main character works at a viscera disposal company that get rid of the bodies once the defense force has defeated the kaiju. He actually wanted to join the force, but he's too old now. He and the new guy at work get attacked by a kaiju and somehow manage to survive. Although, our main character gets, like, affected by a kaiju? They then find out that the eligibility age restriction has been raised, so he's now eligible for one last try. But he literally has to go into the Japan Defense Force, hiding the fact that he is what they're defending against. If you like Hype Shonen Jump type anime, then this is worth a watch. I liked the characters, I liked the action, I liked the world building. There were elements of the plot that went quicker than I was expecting in a good way. Also, there's one lady who has a tiger, living her Jasmine fantasy. They haven't explained why she has a tiger yet, and I hope they never fucking do. Mission Yozakura Family. Good for thee, not for me, I think. Our main character discovers that his close childhood friend is actually the head of a family of spies. And she's also the only non-superhuman one. The superhuman genes, like, skip a generation, so the person who doesn't have superhuman powers, it's kind of their job to create offspring and give birth to the next generation. And all of the superpowered siblings have to protect her, while also doing the spy stuff that the family actually does. God, I just made it sound like some kind of horrific breeding ecchi. It is not. It is a bright, colorful comedy. That said, the plot is kind of that the main girl is a permanent maiden. The vibes are very similar to Assassination Classroom, as far as I'm concerned, except I would rather just watch that. The Many Sides of Voice Actor Radio. Orestria likey. God, this was trashy. The main characters are in high school. They're also seiyuu, which is voice actors. But they're not regular voice actors. They also do idol stuff, try and support their voice acting. Although they know each other as voice actors, they don't even immediately realize that they're in the same class at high school, because their public face is very different than their private face. When their agencies realize they're in the same class at high school, they see this as a marketing opportunity and give them a radio show about that. I wish I could say comedy ensues, but it's really more like melodrama ensues. This is another one of the anime this season that people were touting as being really sapphic, and I don't know if it's just like a slow burn and you see it more in the future, but I didn't really feel any chemistry between the girls. There's like this weird scene where the gloomy girl is like groping the boobs of the Genki girl, and honestly that felt more out of character than like actual girls' love representation. I feel like in terms of quality, this anime isn't really better than a lot of the generic isekai we get. The difference is we get buckets of generic isekai and we get very few generic shoujo daily life melodrama things. So that's why I finished it. I do not think it was good, but it was messy and I enjoyed it. Whisper Me a Love Song! This Seiyuu was like the first girls love music show of the season, and this is the second one, and I think this one is better. One girl is in a band, the other girl sees her band perform, basically falls in love at first sight, so does the other girl. It's like sweet high school romance with some band drama. I found it a bit refreshing for a high school romance, not just because it was girls love instead of het, but everyone was really honest, and there was kind of more drama with the side characters than with the main couple, which meant that you could just relax and enjoy the main couple being fluffy as a break from any of the drama that was happening. That said, at time of recording, this anime isn't even finished because it was hit with a bunch of production issues. Blue Archive, the animation. This was bad. The anime is based on a gacha game that I didn't play because I don't play gacha games. The anime was definitely made for people who played the game because it introduced people and concepts without ever really explaining them. They're wearing high school uniforms and they're at a high school, but it's not actually a high school because there's no teachers or classes or other students. They are some kind of defense force to protect the school from other gangs of people, but I don't really know why because it's just an empty building, and also everyone's bulletproof apparently. The pièce de résistance for me was that the girls, who've presumably been a team for a long time, were struggling with teamwork against the rabble that was attacking them. And the teacher guy who had just showed up like a few hours earlier was able to like fix their coordination. So the girls suck except for thanks to the one guy in the show. There's also just a lot of like weird production choices. There was a scene where two characters were having a conversation and the footage was of characters talking, but it wasn't the characters who were having the conversation. The lip sync and the scenario were different. How does that even happen? The Idol Master, shiny colors. I do not watch idol shows, generally speaking. Jellyfish can't swim in the night. You know what? Orestria likey. Let's just have the quote-unquote sapphic music shows all together right there. And yes, I'm putting them in this order. I think most people would put Jellyfish first, and I disagree. Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night is an anime about artists. One character was a visual artist, one character is an ex-pop idol, another is an obsessive fan of the pop idol, and another is like a Twitch streamer. Well, actually, like a VTuber. They're all experiencing self-doubt in their abilities, and they come together to make YouTube music with like a cute little visual character on it. I feel like this anime was really close to greatness, but it didn't quite make it. Got really focused on the ex-pop idol and why she was an ex-pop idol and her relation to her ex-pop idol group co-workers and boss. Maybe this is just me, but being a pop idol is a reason to be an ex-pop idol. The restrictions on their lives, the manufactured idol industry would already have been a good contrast with the themes of like inspiration that were happening in the anime. As I mentioned, this is the third like sapphic music anime. Whisper Me a Love Song is the only one that was actually girls' love. This was the only one where like girls are dating and kissing. It did give me more lesbonic vibes than Seiragio. There are people who watched Yuri on Ice and didn't realize it was gay, and I don't believe them. But if someone watched this and didn't realize it was gay, like, yeah, I agree. Hiroaka, I haven't watched it yet. Binkai is bad. Binkai is about women's bicycle racing. And there's a group of girls who met online on a fan site for bicycle racing. And for the first time, they've come meet each other offline and to go see one of these races. Seeing the race, they get really excited and they see it on the news and that makes them more excited. And then they decide they're going to be racers and they talk about how they're going to be racers and they look up how to be racers and nobody can talk about anything except for bicycle racing. It's slow. There's limited animation. There's nothing here. Windbreaker. This is why I make these videos when the anime season has finished airing and not like week 3 or 4. Because if I was making this video 4 weeks into the anime season, this would have been in the recommended. And instead, it's going in good for thee, not for me. And that's being kind. Our main character, Sakura, is like a high school tough. His goal is to be like the baddest baddie. So he joins this infamous school that's like run by a gang, only to find out that they're like the good gang. Their local area, the police enforcement had like given up because it was so rough. And so the gang took on all the bad gangs to keep everybody safe. In a kind of similar way, we find out the main character, like he acts all gruff and tough, but he's actually like a little sweetie patootie. Like he might be my favorite tsundere because his tsundere comes from like toxic masculinity. Like he doesn't know how to accept compliments because he feels like he has to be tough. The fight scenes and fight animation were really excellent. At the start of the season, the anime was doing a really good job of demonstrating people's characters and backstories through the fight in like a nice, natural. I mean, I had some minor complaints, like there's this one yellow-haired guy who's really annoying and whiny. Women barely exist, and when they do exist, it's rescued by guys. And also, one of them is like 15 years old, but she doesn't go to school because she owns her own restaurant, and it's like, it was revealed that she was not an adult after several episodes of everyone assuming she was an adult, because what the fuck. There was a point where this anime just ground to a halt. They, like, exposited the backstory of this evil gang that our good gang was fighting, and that was fine, except then they did it again and again and again. Like, we watched multiple episodes of explaining the exact same thing over and over again, like we're idiots. I mean, maybe the manga has better pacing, I don't know. Oh, Girls Band Cry, there was another, like, sapphic music show. This was such... I did not like this. I try not to just be a giant CG anime hater, but, I mean, coming to terms with the fact that I just kind of am. I do think the CG animation here was some of the best I've seen, but not to the point where I don't just think that it would have looked better if it was 2D animated. So a lot of people online really seem to like this and like the characters and their interactions, but I just couldn't get into it. Main character's naivety bordered on, like, painful stupidity. I'm sorry, I do not believe that a bullied 17-year-old does not know what this gesture means. It was a very funny joke, but I know 4-year-olds who know this is rude. Oi, Tombo! That's going straight and good for thee, not for me. An ex-pro golfer finds an excuse to move to this island with no golf course, but, like, he's still kind of into golfing, because even though he specifically found a place with no golf course, he still brings his golf clubs. And then to his surprise, going around the island, he keeps finding signs that golf is popular here, and eventually discovers that the islanders have created their own, like, wild oceanside course. This one local girl, Tombo, is, like, an expert at it, even though she only uses a 3-iron. Seemed really well animated, it seemed, like, lovely and touching, and I could not give less of a shit because I don't like golfing. Seriously. Golfing, car racing, there's baseball later this season. Is anime trying to bore me? As a reincarnated aristocrat, I'll use my appraisal skill to rise in the world. It's a rare case where the Japanese title is actually less painful. Tensei Kisoku Kentei skill de Nariagaru. Let's put this mediocre. Our main character is reincarnated as the son of a lord in a fantasy world, and he has a special skill, appraise. It lets him see the abilities of people. For some reason, it's only military abilities. I guess there's no value to being excellent at sewing. Because he still has his adult intellect, he can kind of see that his region or country is coming up to hard times, so he takes advantage of his power to try and find some good allies. In the first episode, he uses his ability to discover that a guy from a persecuted class is actually awesome, thus solving racism. By solving racism, I mean making that guy his butler. It's very, very basic. There's nothing really wrong with it, it's just there's also nothing good about it. Edition called Love. Alright. We're gonna put this in good for thee, not for me. The high school romance, there's a super popular guy at school, and all the girls ogle him and treat him like a prince, and then he falls in love with the one girl who treats him like an actual human being. She treats him like an actual human being because she's not actually interested in romance, or so she says. He starts, like, really pursuing her, to the point where, like, he asks her what kind of hair she likes, and she says short hair. In a way that makes it really obvious that she's talking about her own hair, because she's saying short hair is easier to care for, and he cuts off his own long hair. And I really need anime to stop making guys with long hair cut it off. Getting really pissed off. I have no real problems with the anime itself. Pacing, the animation, all of that was working really well. But, like, the title of the show is A Condition Called Love. They're referring to the way the main girl says that she's not interested in romance. And I did some research, and anime is going to be about her falling in love with the guy. I'm not aromantic, I'm asexual. But it made me really uncomfortable. It felt like the anime was saying that aromantism is a condition cured or overcome. Asexuality and aromanticism get medicalized. She even calls herself like a robot or a cyborg, which is also another kind of negative stereotype that gets thrown around at aroace people. So for that reason, I couldn't get into it.
I want a romance show with an aromantic lead.
It'd be so dynamic. And like, aromantic people can still love and still find life partners, and seeing two people trying to navigate their difference in attitudes would be an instant watch for me. I don't know, if you're really into anime high school rom-coms,
It didn't seem like there was anything wrong with it.
banished former hero lives as he pleases. That was bad. So our main character was the hero who saved the world, and then he asked to be reborn
so he can have a peaceful life.
This time around, he still has all of the powers he had as a hero, but he's trying to keep them a secret. Now, the title says he was banished, but he wasn't. He was a younger son of a lord who was so lazy that he got kicked out of the family, and he was excited that he got kicked out, which didn't make sense because you could just leave. You have all your superhero powers. You could have left at any point. You didn't have to wait. Whatever. It's got a stock plot with a bunch of info dumps. It's got really ugly animation, and the plot doesn't make any sense. He's trying to live a peaceful life by hiding how powerful he is, but the first time he encounters someone having a problem, he uses, like, the flashiest possible attack and the most insane, like, healing and mending spell. The princess he saved said she had a divine revelation, and then explains what a divine revelation is. Black Butler! So this is a gothic anime full of flamboyant characters and murder and mystery, so you better bet I'm into it. Except not this season. This season was bad. Ciel is a young lord who works for the queen to solve supernatural mysteries using his loyal butler, who is also a demon that's going to eat his soul eventually. But, you know, they have a contract. I usually love this show. I fully admit that it can be really uneven. There have always been parts of Kuroshitsushi that are bad, but when it's good, it's awesome. And I love the character. But this was the worst season of Kuroshitsushi I've ever seen. This is the school arc, and it was even worse than my gut instinct at hearing the phrase school arc. We make no progress on the central mystery for basically the entire season. There's no fight scenes for basically the entire season. There's no murder or horror or intrigue. This was so bad, and it's been so long since I originally saw Kuroshitsushi that I was like, oh my god, was it always this bad? And I went back and watched season 1, and no, season 1 is awesome. I like this franchise. I think you can literally skip this season. Salad bowl of eccentrics? Orestria likey. Like the title says, this anime is very eccentric. You get a reverse isekai where a princess has been teleported to our modern day Japan, but she's really charismatic and smart, so she has no trouble fitting in. She ends up becoming part of the family of a private eye, and she's so clever and has magic powers, so she makes his job easier so he can be more successful. And it's not a romance, thank God, because she's like 12 and he's a grown man. Not even the best part. The best part is actually that her loyal knight, Liv, also comes over to our world, and Liv is beyond naive. Liv keeps getting tricked into all of the scummiest parts of Japanese society in increasingly absurd and delightful ways. Hostess clubs, gunpla resale, pachinko, and more. But it's always able to be fun and lighthearted because she's so powerful that she's not in any danger. In the last episode of this season, the detective said, I see this is all insane as usual, and that pretty much sums up this anime. Shoku Tensei, I haven't watched it yet. I both really want to watch it,
And I'm absolutely terrified.
The Fable! Fable is good for thee, but not for me. Our main character is a legendary hitman, but after a job that's put a little bit too much heat on him, his bosses decide that he needs to lay low. So his new mission is to live a normal life for a year without killing anyone, which is probably going to be his hardest mission ever because people are assholes and he does not have life skills. I liked that this anime felt kind of down to earth. They look more like normal people and less like anime characters. They sound more like normal people and less like anime characters. His sister was like a whole mood. For me, I actually like the more anime character style better than the more human style. And it wasn't really the right kind of humor for me. But I thought the quality was quite good, and I think there's a segment of people
who will just absolutely adore it.
Memory Battery! Also good for thee, not for me. So there's this pair of baseball players, a pitcher and a catcher. And they're at the middle school level, but they are so good at baseball that they crush dreams. Like, players quit baseball because of these two. Our main character is one of those players, and he goes to a high school that doesn't have a baseball team, only to discover that the duo are there. Now, why are they at a school where there's no baseball team? They could have gotten, like, a scholarship to a good-ass school with their skill. Well, the thing is, something happened to the catcher, and now he has amnesia. Dun dun dun! This anime is pretty good. Easily a 6 out of 10. I just can't stand it. I found the amnesiac character annoying as fuck. This appeared to be intentional. You know, one of those things where, like, to show a character's growth, might show them as an asshole first. And it was also, I think, supposed to be the comedic relief, but it just absolutely grated on me. Also, I hate baseball, even if it is Japan's national sport. Wait, I live in Japan. Does that make baseball my national sport? Ew. Grandma and Grandpa turn young again. I fucking hate anime. Bad. This anime has a really cute premise of an elderly couple who have been happily married for 60 years and they suddenly just become young. In every way except for their hair stays white. The entire rest of what I was able to get through of the anime was just people finding them hot. Like, the granddaughter suddenly having the hots for grandpa. I think this had a lot of potential to be cute. Maybe it had more jokes that weren't like that later on. Maybe it's just my asexuality showing, but I was really, like, skeeved out by this entire thing. Free Monster! Also bad. Our main character is reborn as a goblin. Turns out goblins age, like, really quickly, so he's mature enough to go out hunting in 3 days. And he's smarter than your average goblin! The pacing was, like, really dull. They keep showing you what day it is, and I do not care. I've seen anime before where someone gains abilities when they kill something or eat something or whatever. And usually, like, they kill something, they gain an ability, they learn to use that ability or something like that. This was, like, a flood of abilities. You would, like, eat one thing and get, like, pop-up windows. So, it's only episode 1, and I have no idea what abilities he has. You could say any ability he had and be like, oh, it was briefly visible for 1 frame back then. Like, whatever. That would probably have this in media. What brings this down a level is this, like, attitude towards women. The 2 women that were, like, in this episode, one was the yandere that killed him in his first life. The other is a goblin woman, and, like, she behaves how incels think women behave. He, like, shows himself to be a good hunter, and she is all over herself trying to get with him. We get shown a room full of human women who the goblins keep for breeding purposes. It might even make sense logically in the story, and I don't think they're going to be showing us horrific scenes of it, but I was already not really enjoying this anime, and
that makes me completely and utterly disinterested in watching more.
The Duke of Death and his maid, I dropped this. Daimo Kairi is mediocre. And you know something's up when a Fujoshi like me is putting a BL show that low on the rating. This anime is a Megaverse. You're having one of 3 reactions. Either you're excited, you're going, oh god, why does it have to be Omegaverse? Or you're going, huh? Omegaverse is a bunch of tropes that, as far as I'm aware, originated with gay fan fiction. Although you can use it with any relationship structure you want. In Omegaverse, people are separated into alphas, betas, and omegas. No, this isn't incel stuff. This is somehow different. Alphas are dominant and will claim their mate. Omegas are submissive and have pheromones that like drive the alphas crazy. And while it's not a necessary feature, a common feature is male pregnancy. Also not necessary, but at least in my mind very common, is a lot of dub-con, non-con sexual stuff. I walked into this anime with a sense of terror. And I'm glad to at least say that there wasn't really any of the like sexual stuff. In fact, in one sense, this anime is something I've been asking for. A BL with adults who are already in a relationship. In fact, they're already married and have a child. So I don't really like babies in general. And this one was like really, really
TV perfect.
like only cries when there's a good reason to cry.
That's not how babies work.
There's a bit of a like through line of like Omega discrimination. We don't have to make up discrimination. You could have this anime be about the discrimination that a gay couple face, especially a gay couple trying to adopt a child, and it would be a lot more meaningful. They barely touch at the fictional discrimination that's there because most of it is just really light and fluffy. The animation's really middling, and I just totally lost
Interest.
Studio apartment, good lighting, angel included. Mid. We have a high school boy living in an apartment on his own. He gets home from his part-time work and finds an angel on his balcony. At first he thinks she's like a crazy lady and like sends her out, but she's so naive that she almost gets picked up by a skeevy guy, so then he decides that he does have to be like responsible for her. It's a rom-com about a boring average guy and a perfect angel girl. This time literally an angel. Apparently it's also going to be a harem later on. I didn't watch that much of it. If it's stuck at like a cute fluffy sweetness, which seemed like the overall vibe, then maybe I'd be okay with it. But there were also a lot of ecchi shots. Like one of the first things that happens when he sees her is he spills milk on her tits. I cannot. Killing in another world with level 2 cheat powers. Definitely better than that. Alright, let's put it in mediocre as well. This anime starts with this weird moment where the main character is just a regular guy in a fantasy world, but one who isn't racist in a world full of racism. And then he gets isekai'd to a different, basically identical fantasy world, but the new one just doesn't have racism. I have no idea what the point of that was. There's like this joke where he doesn't realize he's overpowered because his like stats have the infinity symbol and he doesn't know what that means. And I was like, oh god, is this another one of these isekai where like the running joke is that he doesn't realize he's strong? But it seemed like by the end of the episode he was starting to figure it out, so we dodged that. No, what this anime is about is a harem of women. This is just good old, he has a harem of fantasy girls for no real reason, and he's overpowered for no real reason. Okay, what was really funny to me, there's other girls on the side, but this is clearly like the main girl, right? She's not in the first episode. I don't usually watch promotional videos, but I saw a promotional video and like the thumbnail was her face. And I just finished the first episode. I wasn't
Planning on watching any more.
So I'm going to watch this PV to get some sense of what's up with this woman. The way the promotional video included not a single scene from the first episode, they know that their first episode is so boring and pointless that they didn't include it in their promotional material. Guys, if your first episode is bad, you can just change it. I do think that the harem designs were better than average. I felt like there was a little bit more diversity in body type. The main girl actually looks super cute. If you're really into harem stuff, I mean, maybe it's watchable, but it doesn't have much going for it.
性別を選択してください。
じゃあ
Yatagarasu, the raven does not choose its master. This is very much in the same boat as level 2 cheat powers. I only watched the first episode. There were a bunch of ladies from the different courts, and they'd all come to the main court to try and become the consort of the Raven King. Oh, sorry, the Kinu, who is the head of the clan, and the Kinu position is passed from parent to child. So you don't have to explain monarchy to me. The main girl in this episode doesn't even know the cultural or political situation of her own country that she lives in, doesn't realize that trying to become his consort is like a proxy war. The best thing I can say for this episode is that I've heard that it's not a good representation of what the show is about. Once again, if your first episode does not represent your show and sucks, change your first episode. Vampire Dormitory. It's so mid. So mid. It's bordering on bad. So we meet our main character, and he's just gotten fired, and he doesn't have a family, and he's clumsy as fuck. He stands on the edge of a bridge, contemplating you-know-what, but because he's clumsy, he then actually falls. This vampire guy saves him. And the vampire has been looking everywhere for a pretty boy, because he says he can't drink blood from girls. And so he, takes the main character home to be his thrall, and the main character reveals to the audience that he's actually a girl. Classic Hanakimi-style gender-bending shoujo rom-com. Should be right up my alley. There's vampires too. I am the target audience. If I had seen this when I was in high school, it probably would have been my personality for 6 months. I mean, I like the character designs well enough, but this looks like garbage. It's usually tedious. The kind of shoujo squeeze scenes that get you excited are way too far apart. So I'm watching it for Orestria. The new gate is bad. We're starting at the finale of Sword Art Online. All these people have been trapped in a VR MMORPG, and our main character is the Kirito, and he defeats the final boss, and everyone is finally able to log off. And he's such a good guy that he waits to make sure everyone's been able to log off before he tries to log off. But when he's the last person in the game,
The new gate opens.
he goes through it, ends up in the future of the game world. And again, no ability to log off. That was a great decision. One of the problems is that it has so much exposition that it's just rushing through everything, and you don't have a chance to
Feel anything emotionally.
Another problem is that they're telling us everything instead of showing it, because showing us would require some kind of animation. I'm not joking when I say the first minute of this anime had actually 0 animation. It was nothing but still image pans. It's bland, it can't do exposition effectively, and it's janky. Astronaut! Nothing like a new original anime that manages to feel retro. This is going in recommend. Little borderline, but yeah. It's something different. We need different things in anime. We need anime originals that are willing to go somewhere. This anime is about an alien princess and her bodyguard who happens to look like a dog, and they're living in a boarding house in Japan. She needs to find the key and bring it back to her home planet so that she can become the queen. They have reason to believe that the key is hidden somewhere at this boarding house, the Astro Lodge. The rest of the cast is just all the eccentrics living in the lodge. There's an underground pop idol, a jobless single dad, an old man, and the newest guy who is a chef. And the chef falls in love with the princess immediately, and she falls in love with him too. This anime brings so much variety. There's sentimental scenes, there's comedy, there's romance, there's slice of life, there's space spycraft, there's idol dance scenes. I'm not sure how it works. This anime is entirely made up of plot lines, just weaved in together. And I mean the kind of plot line where, a lesser anime could be entirely about one of these plots, and instead,
This just keeps piling them on top of each other.
it was entertaining, it was lighthearted. The conclusion was not unexpected, but nevertheless satisfying. Kimitsu no Aipri looked and sounded exactly like the kind of idol show I do not watch. Shadow vs. Flame I have not seen. Shinko Leon changed the world. I watched the first episode of the first season of Shinko Leon. My overall vibes were this was very for kids. And there's nothing wrong with anime for kids,
But I did not want to watch it.
Viral hit. This is going pretty squarely and
Good for thee, not for me.
our main character is a bullied kid who finally hits his wall and fights back, and somehow his fight is accidentally like live streamed and becomes a viral hit on YouTube. And so like they're doing guest YouTube Fight Club things. I felt really uncomfortable watching this. It felt like this miserable everybody sucks here vibe. And then I was really surprised because I went to drop it on Mal and I found out that the tags are action comedy. I don't feel comfortable saying it's bad because either I didn't make it far enough to get to the comedy, or the comedy is some strain of comedy that I simply do not understand. I think it might be the latter, because I am notoriously bad with cringe comedy. I either don't notice that that's what's happening, or just hate it in general. I don't know. Comedy's very subjective. If the comedy works for you, then I think it could be good. It seemed to have decent quality. I just disliked watching every part of it personally. Sandland! Also gonna go in good for thee, not for me. We're in a desert world with a corrupt king who has all the access to the water. Local sheriff decides to team up with some demons to go and get water, bringing them into conflict with the king's army. This is written by the late, great Akira Toriyama. I was pretty surprised to find out that the manga was from 2000s because it feels older than that. It feels like it's from, the 80s or early 90s, where women were invented. It's very slick, it's very watchable, very well animated. There's action and comedy. I just wasn't personally into it. I understand that there is a femme character in the second half, which has new material that was written by Akira Toriyama before he passed, versus what was in the original Sandland manga. It's not for me. Kimetsu no Yaiba. For people who are new here, my general feelings about Kimetsu no Yaiba is that it should be bad, but somehow is not. If I made a pro and con list of things that were good about Kimetsu no Yaiba, things that were bad about Kimetsu no Yaiba, I'm fairly certain my con list would be at least double the length. The strengths are its ability to make me sympathize with the demons. You understand them without exactly forgiving them. And then also the battles just generally awesome. They are spectacles. So what if we had a training arc where none of the things I like about the anime exist? This season of Kimetsu no Yaiba is bad. Bad! They're trying to flesh out the Hashira, but instead of doing it through battles like they usually do, they're just doing it in a training arc. Spoilers for the arc before this one. At the end of the last arc, Nezuko became able to speak and walk in the sun again, but she's just not in this arc because we can't have fucking female characters in Kimetsu no Yaiba. There is a scene where Tanjiro is like imagining that Nezuko, his older sister, must be crying like a baby at being left alone. Oh, infantilized. I can't. Since when was the Demon Slayer Corps entirely dudes? Pretty sure there used to be girls other than the Hashira, but not in this arc. This arc is just constantly dozens of shirtless, boring, identical, personality-less dudes. For plot purposes, you need to watch the first and last episode of this season, so I can't literally just say skip it. I guess if you're super interested in learning more about the Hashira, you could sit through it, but, I'm sorry, they all have the same background story. There was someone I cared about and they were killed by demons, so I became
A demon slayer.
Alright, let's do... Before we go to the best boy, best girl, and trans non-binary highlight segments of our video, let's take one last little scroll through our tier maker. Special emphasis on the recommended tier.
Dungeon Meshi, Kaiju Hachigo, Tonari no Yokai-san, Go-Go Loser Ranger, and Astronaut. And Spice and Wolf if you think you have any interest in that kind of thing.
We didn't have any Just Be Porn this season. That's good. Best girl. First, a dishonorable mention to Kimetsu, as always. Women best be seen and not heard, eh? Women do be liking sweets, eh? Ha ha ha! You would think in a season with so many Yuri or Yuri bait shows, I'd have a lot of girls to choose from. But not many ladies caught my attention this time around. I wasn't getting the squeeze. I only have one honorable mention. Livia from Salad Bowl. She is my disasterina. She's the reason I watched the anime, basically. The main characters, the princess and detective, they're fine, but fuck them. This is Liv's show. Liv stumbles through every scummy business in Japan with utter sincerity and naivete. But also, since she's a powerful knight and mage, you never feel worried for her or her safety. So we can safely skewer the situation and stay light-hearted. But the best girl for this season, well, I knew her as a famous anime waifu before I ever actually saw her anime. And I get it. I totally get it. Wise Wolf Hollow from Spice and Wolf just is that girl. She's beautiful, she's sassy, she's smart. She can turn into a giant wolf and wreck face. And yet, we also get to see her vulnerable side. I like seeing this version of wisdom that is still excited for life and new experiences. It's not world-weary. And she has a hedonism, a joie de vivre, that just helps her feel more like an animal spirit. Best boy. A dishonorable mention to Kuno Shitsushi for airing a season, but then not including my favorite character at all, and being so bad that I didn't care. As for the honorable mentions, Sakura and Suo from Windbreaker. I understand Sakura. He's technically a tsundere, which is not a character trope I'm really interested in, but it feels natural here. Like, he's a good sweet kid who latched onto toxic masculinity as a way to protect himself from bullying. I also like how the other characters have noticed it and just pick at him to get a reaction for their own amusement. And Suo, he's a pretty boy with an eye patch, and what is probably a horrible personality, literally toying with an inferior opponent. And yes, that is why I love him. Sadly, there was like one episode where he got to really show off before I dropped the anime. If he were in an anime I liked better or had more to do, he could have become a big deal with me. I was impressed with Ichikawa from Kaiju Hachiko. I feel like he could have really easily been annoying or like mascot-esque or just an afterthought, and instead he feels earnest and adorable. But I'm going to give best boy to Kabru from Dungeon Meshi. He's not one of the main crew. In fact, for the first half of the anime, my boy was having a bit of a hard time. But he has this social insight with a sneaky self-serving attitude that weirdly scratches my crazy psycho stabby boy itch. Well, that not actually being a good description of him at all. I do hope he gets more to do next time.
Now it's time for the trans non-binary highlight.
Slim pickings this season. There's a scene from Yoru no Kurage that seems to suggest that Kiwi might be exploring their gender identity, but the English subtitles were more gendered than the original Japanese, and then it never comes up again, so it made it really hard for me to be sure what was really intended. Then there's also this kid from Astronaut. One of the infinite subplots of the anime is him starting to wear a skirt, because he likes it. At first he only does it at home, but by the end of the series he's wearing it out with his friends. Now, I don't think wearing a skirt makes someone a woman or non-binary, and the anime doesn't get into it any more than that, which I think is fair because he's a child. But I enjoyed having this plotline in the show. I feel pretty positive about this season overall. We had a lot of variety, not so much isekai or basic high school stuff, and we had a lot of queer content. So, keep it up, anime landscape. See you next time. Bye-bye. The other exceptions is that I usually don't watch anime, just anime,